I've got to make sure it's a happy one. Meanwhile, the bee will disappear.
So this was from Mummy's birthday yesterday.
Wax in your water, Mummy.
Oh, the darling. You don't,
What, darling?
you can watch a video and take photos.
At the same time?
On my phone, yeah.
Okay.
All right. We've got happy birthday and 8 and a 2. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday, dear Mommy. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mommy.
Well done. Very good, everyone. Well done, everyone. Now, let's listen to how to solve everybody's money problems. Very important subject. Not for me, but so many people. Like you'd like to have a lot of money, wouldn't you, my darling?
Oh, I would really love to
Really
have a
love
big
it.
house.
Okay, all you need to do is watch this video and then you can have your big house.
What?
It's as easy as
I think it's so important for people to remember that they're the creators of their lives instead of the victim of their lives, right? So the victim is saying, I'm feeling this way because that person or that
That's so annoying. This horrible thing pops up on Windows System now and you can't get rid of it. Oh, it's so annoying, isn't it? Just start again.
Come on, honey pie.
circumstance or I don't have any money is causing me to feel this way. That's my relationship with money. What that really means is I'm using my lack to...
I think you gotta have a dream.
The School of Greatness.
Really? Yeah.
Please welcome Lewis Howes.
What is your thoughts around the identity of money and the psychology of how it plays in our lives? Because a lot of people want to make more, they want to attract more, but they're just struggling with just the concept of it.
Yeah. Well, I think we've been programmed quite a bit with our relationship with money. I mean, we have a relationship with everything known in our environment. You have a relationship, a neurological network in your brain for your parents, for your cell phone, for your computer, where you live, where you've lived in the past, what you're going to do tomorrow. That, for the most part, the brain is a reflection of everything that we know, right? So along with that is our relationship with money. And I feel like I have a really good relationship with money because I work on having a really good relationship with everything in my life. Right?
Did you always have a good relationship with money?
I think so. I think so. I've never really lived in lack. That just wasn't part of it. Even when I went to college and I had to take out student loans and stuff, I always figured out a way to always be a little bit ahead of the curve. And so let's back up and just look at how people form beliefs. Because most beliefs are created from past experiences, right? So children, when they're in their early ages, their brainwaves are very slow. Like their brainwaves are in alpha when they're like 7 to 12. They're in theta when they're like 2 to 6 years old, and they're in delta like when they're newborn to 2 years old. And so these brainwave states are states that were really suggestible to information.
So when we hear information, we believe it.
And we accept it, we believe it, we surrender to it as if it's the truth without analyzing it, because there's no analytical facilities yet.
Right.
The analytical mind starts around 12 or so, 7 to 12, and that analytical mind is actually what creates a barrier between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind.
So before 12, roughly, what we see, how we model our parents' behavior, what they say to us.
It's all being programmed subconsciously, right? And so that's really, really important, because if you heard money is the root of all evil, money is bad, Only certain people are allowed to make money. You have to work hard to make money. This is how you got to do it. And that becomes the foundation subconsciously. Recording an audio file. You just keep recording that audio file, it becomes a subconscious program, right? So a lot of people have a relationship with money based on either what they've been told or what they've experienced in their outer environment, right? So then we gain information from our environment, and the stronger the emotion we feel from experiences in our lives, the more altered we feel inside of us, the more the brain freezes a frame and takes a picture. And that snapshot is called the memory. So
based on an emotion.
Based on an emotion. The emotion alters our internal state. So you're going along as Lewis, feeling really good, and all of a sudden you have this trauma, you have this crisis, you have this shock, and all of a sudden you have this dramatic change in your internal state, and your senses get heightened, and then you freeze the frame and you associate this internal state with whatever it is that's causing it, right? And that's how we create long-term memories, right? So
Are painful memories more powerful, or beautiful memories more powerful?
they're both equal.
Okay.
They're both equal, but the problem is I think most people experience from more the negative emotions, right? And those negative emotions really are derived from the hormones of stress, right? So the alarm system, the emergency system, creates an arousal inwardly. And that arousal is saying there's something dangerous in your outer environment, right? And it could be a person, a circumstance, an accident, or whatever. And that change in emotional state causes you to remember the event. You got to pay attention, right? You got to stay really and narrow your focus on the cause. So think about people who have relationships with money, right, from the past. All beliefs are based on past experiences. So you have an experience where you lose money, you have an experience where money's taken away from you, you have an experience where you don't have enough, you're living in a place where there's not enough money, or a family that's not enough money. Then the emotion that most people are living by on a moment-to-moment basis is lack. Like, I'm in lack of having something that I want. Okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because the experience changes your emotional state. You freeze the frame, you take a picture. The problem is, that's hardware. So we think neurologically within the circuits of that past experience, and we feel chemically within the boundaries of that emotion, which would say, for example, be lack, right? So now the person says...
Before you go on to the next thing, what happens to the body and the mind when it is in an environment of lack? Mentally or physically, I'm in lack. What is the body and the mind saying?
Yes, so the body is saying, I'm waiting for some external event to occur. I win the lottery. I marry the right guy. Whatever it is, that you're waiting for that event to occur. That experience produces an emotion. So the emotion then takes away the lack. And so when we play the game in three-dimensional reality, the creation game in three-dimensional reality, we experience separation from everyone or everything, because our senses fool us into the illusion, the hallucination of separation. I'm here and you're there. I'm here and the door is over there. So I'm aware that I'm here at one point of consciousness, and the door is over there, another point of consciousness. Okay, so in order for me to get from here to the door, I got to move my body and do something through space. I got to do something, and everything in this three-dimensional reality is going to take time and energy, right? So, okay, so then here's Lewis right here, and then he says, okay, I want this experience in my future, and your brain automatically predicts and projects how far in the future you think it's going to take.
Maybe it's a year, 5 years, 10 years.
30 years.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Because that's what it's going to take to pay off that house, right? So now, one point of consciousness, I'm here. The other point of consciousness is where I'm placing my dream. So I'm separate from that experience. So then how do I get to that experience? In three-dimensional reality, you got to get up and you got to do something. You got to go to work. You got to drive to work. It takes energy. You got to fill your car with gas. You got to eat food. You got to work. All this stuff. You got to sleep. You got to recover if there's stress. And now people are, in a sense, waiting for the experience that's 10 years down the road or 30 years down the road to happen, to take away the lack of them not having it. And unfortunately, many times when the experience finally occurs, they can't enjoy it because they're too exhausted, right? So you play the game, you go to school, you study really hard, or you study on your own, You develop some skills, you make the right choices, you start saving money, you start learning from your mistakes, and then the game is how many things can you accumulate, and that accumulation then you associate with being wealthy or being abundant or being successful, right? And some people get really good at it, right? You can get really good at that. But for the most part, though, when we create from three-dimensional reality, we're creating from lack and separation. In other words, you're driving down the road and you see someone driving a car that all of a sudden you realize that you don't have. The moment you become aware that that person has that car and you don't have it, you're in lack of having it, right? So what the brain naturally does is it naturally creates you driving that car. And you have an image of yourself driving that car and you start identifying, wow, that would be a greater experience for me to have. The problem is the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of actually happening for most people is the concept called time, right? Between cause and effect, right? So some people develop the ability to manage themselves and manage their life. They develop certain skills and they can pay for it and they can get it very quickly. The problem is when the novelty of that experience wears off, the car, and they're no longer identifying with that, and the feeling of emptiness and lack comes back.
They need to find something else.
They got to go
attach
to
a
find
feeling.
something else. And so there's this game that goes on where you never have enough, right? And that's the lack game, right? So then if you think about people having the things they want in their life, when they create from lack and separation, it's the experience in three-dimensional reality that produces the emotion, and the emotion is saying, let's feel and experience this thing that you've been in lack and separation from, and that emotion then takes away the lack or separation. But you've worked really hard to get it, okay? Nothing wrong with that. Is there another way to do it?
Yes.
Okay, so the person who's living in lack is waiting for their wealth to feel abundant. They're waiting for their success to feel empowered. They're waiting for their healing to feel gratitude. They're waiting for their new relationship to feel love. They're waiting for their mystical experience to feel awe. That's the Newtonian model of reality, of cause and effect. Waiting for that event to happen to take away this separation or lack. Nothing wrong with it. It's the way most people create. But what we've discovered is actually something else. The moment you feel gratitude, your healing begins. The moment you feel worthy and abundant, you're generating wealth. The moment you're empowered, you are moving towards your success. The moment you're in love with yourself and you're in love with life, you'll create an equal. The moment you are in awe of life, you're going to have a mystical experience. And so that's causing an effect, right? So then if you can teach people then how to create, instead of from lack or separation, but create from wholeness, and create from what we call the quantum field instead of three-dimensional reality.
What's the difference?
Okay, so the way first of all, it takes knowledge, okay? The quantum field is an invisible field of energy that exists beyond our senses. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't hear it, you can't feel it. It exists beyond our experience of three-dimensional reality.
Would this be in our mind's consciousness, or would this be in a different space?
Okay, let's look at that. So the answer to the question is, how much of your waking day do you put your attention on matter, on the material world, and how much of your waking day are you aware of energy and frequency? For most people, they're unaware of the quantum field. And if you're unaware of it, it doesn't exist for you. Right. Just like you have a nose, but if you're unaware of it, it doesn't exist for you. The moment you become aware of it, it exists. Well, the quantum field, you can study all kinds of science, and they'll tell you there is this invisible field of frequency and energy that exists beyond the senses that tend to connect everything physical and material. In fact, everything physical and material is connected to this field, okay? So how do you get there, right? How do you get there?
How do you get there?
How do you get there? So we discovered that when you take all of your attention off your body and you are not paying attention to your emotions, your drives, your habits, if you could take all of your attention off of every element in your environment, your cell phone, your tablet, your computer, your car, your whatever it is, your bed, take your attention away from everything, every place that you live, where you sleep, where you work, and you're not thinking about time. You're not thinking about your schedule, where you need to be, or what happened yesterday. You can relax into the present moment. There tends to be a dramatic change in the way the brain functions when people do this properly. We call it getting beyond yourself, but in a sense, you're dissociating from your three-dimensional reality. Why? Because if you're thinking about anything in your three-dimensional reality, that's where your attention is and that's where your energy is, okay? So we kind of figured out this formula when people really become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and no time. They're pretty much all of a sudden outside the constraints of the Newtonian world of got to do something to get an outcome. And if you can teach people how to linger there without a name, without a face, without a profession, without a family, without a culture, without a past, without a disease, you teach them how to be in this place we call the unknown, right? And you teach them that from that place, that invisible field, is where everything material comes from. And if they could create coherence in their brain, you need a strong signal in the brain. The more coherent the brain, the more stronger the signal.
What do you mean a strong signal?
Okay, let's see how I could say this. When most people, when we look at brains in real time, and we're looking at people's how their mind is working. When you're under stress, okay, stress is created by not being able to predict something that's going to happen in your life. The perception that something's going to get worse or you can't control something, right? So when that occurs, we switch on that primitive nervous system called the fight or flight nervous system, and the brain goes into this very alarmed state called high beta. That means pay attention to the outer world. There's danger out there. But if it's not a predator and it's traffic or your coworker or your ex,
right.
This is where it gets to be a problem because it becomes very maladaptive, right? So when we're in that state and the brain is in that aroused state, we try to control and predict everything. So every person, every object, everything, every place, even your body has a neurological network in your brain, right? So as the arousal happens, we start shifting our attention to all these elements, and like a lightning storm in the clouds, the brain starts firing very, very incoherently. And when the brain's incoherent, we're incoherent.
So that's not a strong signal.
That's not. It's a static on the wire. That's disconnection. There is no signal.
Right.
So when we're in that state, we're always really looking for the worst case scenario of what's going to happen. Because if you prepare for the worst, anything less happens, a better chance of survival, right? So in this kind of aroused state, as we shift our attention to each one of these elements that are known in our environment, the brain starts compartmentalizing and firing out of order. And that is what creates what's called autonomic dysregulation. That causes the brain and body to get really out of balance, right? So in that state, we're over-focused. You know, when you're stressed, you're over-focused on something. You can't stop thinking about it. Our research shows that when you do that, you actually make your brain worse because you're analyzing your problems within some disturbing emotion, and that emotion is driving you further out of balance. You're actually knocking your brain and body out of balance by thought alone, and you're driving it into these more aroused states, right?
For someone that's been living like that for decades, that's their base state. How do they even realize how to get out of that?
They don't. Usually it takes crisis, right? It takes trauma.
Extreme breakdown.
Yeah, breakdown.
A loss, a death,
all of
a
that.
Breakup, a divorce, a
bankruptcy, whatever it is, a disease, a diagnosis, whatever. Something where you just can't go on business as usual. Now it's time to really start looking, right?
They have to wake up then.
Yeah. So let's get back to the concept of abundance here, because
you need a strong signal in this field.
Right. So then, if you can teach people to do the exact opposite, go from putting all of their attention on everything physical and material in the world of separation, and instead of narrowing their focus on something material, ask them to broaden their focus and put it on nothing. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but when you put your attention on space and you divert your attention, the act of sensing without thinking actually starts to slow the brainwaves down. Not only slow it down, but all of a sudden cause the brain to start reintegrating, starts to synchronize, right? And so you see different compartments of the brain that were firing out of order start to resonate. They start to communicate. They're all of a sudden synchronizing, and what syncs in the brain kind of links in the brain. So when a person has their whole entire brain firing in rhythm, That's a very strong signal that you can send out into the field.
So when that signal is strong in that position, what can you create from that space?
Okay, but that's only one element.
Okay.
So then the clear intention tends to be a very important element that we have to get down. And the more coherent the brain, the more clear the signal for that intention. So with intention and attention, we could actually make thought more real than anything else. Now, what is that? You're saying, what would it be like to be wealthy? What would it be like to be abundant? What would it be like to have all my needs met? What would it be like to have more than I need? What would I do if I had everything I ever wanted? The answer always is the same. You start giving stuff away. Because if an abundant person is truly abundant, why would they hold on? They would say, I'm not in lack. There's more for everybody. Okay? Turns out, though, that the signal sent out isn't enough. You have to draw the experience back to you. And so
you're sending the signal out to,
it's coherent brain,
financial freedom,
whatever
abundance, all these different things.
Right. Whatever that is for you. Whatever that is for you.
You're putting that out there with your signal with the intention and the attention.
Right.
And then how do you draw it to you? So in the physical world,
in the physical world, you got to go get it. You got to do something. This is the plane of demonstration. You got to go get it. And when you're in lack until it occurs, right?
But I'm hearing you say there's a way to not chase but attract.
All right, so if you're creating from the field instead of from matter, right, there's a very strong possibility that you'll shorten the distance between the thought of what you want and the experience of having it. And when there's a vibrational match between your energy and that future that you want to experience, now if you're creating from the field, you actually don't go anywhere to get it. You actually draw it to you. So here comes the synchronicities, the serendipities, the coincidences, the opportunities, and they come out of nowhere. And you say, I don't understand. I didn't do anything. Well, you changed your energy. And so then the other element is a coherent heart, right? And the heart has a magnetic signature. And the magnetic signature is what draws reality to us, right? So you combine that clear intention with a coherent brain. Now here's the key. This takes practice.
Yes.
Because the person who's living in lack is usually unworthy, is usually insecure, is usually in their past, they're usually frustrated, they're usually impatient, they're usually resentful because nothing's changing out there because it's taking too long. Well, everything takes a lot of time when you do matter to matter, right? So then if you teach them, okay, we know all about that. We know the story behind that. We know what your parents told you about money, all that other. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But now let's do something that would be really cool. Let's write down the feelings of how you would feel if that future happened, and you're going to have to feel that feeling before it occurs. So now, okay, what does an abundant person feel? Pretty much free, a lot of freedom.
Peace, excited, joyful.
In love with life, grateful to be alive, abundant. Okay, now let's practice feeling those. Turns out when you're feeling those other emotions like resentment and impatience and frustration, you're stepping on the gas pedal, you're turning on the sympathetic nervous system, and you're stepping on the brake. At the same time, which is you're angry, you're frustrated, but the fight or flight nervous system says run, fight, or hide, and you're sitting in a Zoom meeting and your neck is pulsating is because the heart is beating against the closed system, right? You're not using it in an adaptive way. So the heart starts firing out of order. It starts firing incoherently, and incoherent waves cancel each other out. It's called destructive interference, and then we stop trusting our future. Energy leaves the heart. Energy leaves the brain, energy leaves the heart, and you can't get in touch with the feeling of your future because in survival, which those are hormones of stress, all those emotions, in survival it's not a time to create, right? It's time to run, fight, and hide. Okay, so we've got to lay down the very thing we used our whole life to get what we want. The habit of doing it that way for something greater to occur. Okay.
And what happens if we try to create from survival emotions?
It just takes a long time. You'll just force it.
Little steps at a time.
You'll force it. Yeah. You'll force it. You'll fight for it. You'll compete for it. And you'll manipulate. You'll cheat. You'll lie. You'll do anything to get what you want because that's what matter does when it's trying to change matter. And everybody's playing that game, right? Everybody's trying to accumulate the most amount of things.
Right.
Okay, so that's what abundance means to certain people. Get as many things as you can. Okay. You want that? Not a problem. But let's learn the formula of how to create, right?
Yes.
So then you'd have to feel those emotions before the experience occurred. And if you understood that you could dissociate all of your attention from this three-dimensional reality and have no attention on anything known, and understand that it's the field that creates matter, not matter that emits the field. And if you could get to that place and change your energy with a clear intention and elevated emotion, your heart starts beating in this beautiful rhythm like a drum. We've measured it so many times. And when that occurs, the next thing that happens, the heart informs the brain, it's safe to create now. So the person relaxes into the present moment. And then we see this, like if you took a big sheet, and a blanket, and you went like that, the energy of the heart actually informs the brain to move into these beautiful, elegant states of alpha brainwave patterns, coherent alpha. And that's saying, what's the next dream? What's the next opportunity you want to experience? That's a state of creation. So now you have a Wi-Fi signal. You got a coherent brain, that's a directive, that's a signal out, and you got this coherent heart. That's what draws it to us, right? You combine those two, and if there's a vibrational match between your energy and that potential in the quantum field, and you're feeling abundant, and whatever your brain associates with being abundant, that's your call. That's what the creative process is. This is the creative center. The brain frontal lobe actually says, what would it be like to be creative or abundant? I don't know what it'd be like to be abundant. Well, then go read a few books on people who actually became abundant and realized it wasn't a glorious process. They failed miserably. They got betrayed. They learned a lot of lessons, but they persevered. And what are the qualities of that person that you could embody? That's the key, right? Because it's not about wealth. It's who you become, right? Because people think it's about their wealth, but it's the becoming process. It's the overcoming.
That attracted that, right?
Of course. So then you got to turn the battleship around, because most people say, I can't feel grateful for my wealth because it hasn't happened yet.
We're just waiting for Lin Feng to do the photos.
Waiting for the experience to happen to feel grateful.
Yesterday.
Well, that's Newtonian, that's three-dimensional reality, that's cause and effect. The quantum, you got to feel it in order for you to experience it. Okay, so this heart becomes like an amplifier, and it sends that signal out, and that frequency can carry the thought of your abundance. Suffering cannot carry the thought of your abundance. Lack cannot carry the thought of your abundance. It's a different frequency, right? We feel different feelings like suffering. We think different thoughts, right? So people can say, I'm abundant, all they want, but that thought is never making it to the body, because it's stopping at the brainstem, because the body's saying, I'm miserable, I'm unhappy, I'm in lack, right? So the affirmation doesn't work, right? Okay, so let's go one step further. So if you practice this, and you actually understood, we'll teach this pretty well, but if you learned it just like learning how to play handball, or learning how to hit a golf ball, learning how to dance the salsa, if you just practice the formula, you get really good at it. If you're doing it properly, then what would be the outcome?
Emotional awareness,
the experiment
and self-compassion.
of being the
If you'd like to learn more and join with us in our efforts, please visit
Okay, let's have a look then.
Why?
So just go to your photos, yeah?
Insights at the Edge. My guest is
sent me on
Ashley
email.
Wood. Ashley is the co-founder, alongside her creative collaborator, Ben Wood, of Align Within, a platform dedicated to supporting people in using their Akashic records to understand their soul journey. And if you aren't sure what the Akashic records are, no worries. That's where our conversation begins. Ashley Wood is committed to creating a modern and accessible way for people to access their own deepest wisdom, through teaching people how to activate what she calls the line, a way of accessing soul-level guidance. She hosts a podcast where she shares channel teachings called The Line, and she's the human instrument for a new book, What Sounds True, called The Line, a new way of living, the wisdom of your Akashic records. As you can already tell from my introduction to Ashley, get ready to meet an unusual person. Someone who is true to their own wisdom, what she calls our sovereignty. Someone on a mission to help others live what that principle alignment.
I'm going to send these to Auntie Claire as well then, okay?
Ashley Wood.
Yeah, I just forwarded it, yeah.
Ashley, with your new book, Reality, you're helping people find a modern, accessible way to access the wisdom of the Akashic Records. For people who are like, the what? The what records? What are we talking about? Let's start there. What are, maybe you say Akashic. Akashic, what are the Akashic?
The more we put our attention on the fact that we don't have it, right? So then the person has forgotten that they're creating reality because what they're creating is lack. And they're creating more of it. And then they try harder, and they force harder, and they control
and they're more exhausted, and their body's tired.
And they're breaking down, and right. So the experiment then is, let's try it another way. Let's create from the field instead of from matter. Get a coherent heart, get a coherent brain, relax in the heart, and energy moves right into the brain. We've measured this 1,000 times, and all of a sudden the person moves into these beautiful, elegant brainwave states where they're super creative, right? Mm-hmm. So the longer you're conscious of that energy, the more you draw that future to you. So then, what does the synchronicity mean? It means whatever you're doing inside of you is producing that effect outside of you. Pay attention to what you did. And do it again. Yeah. So generate a little bit more abundance. Just do it for an experiment. Now, when the synchronicity happens, do you think you feel suffering or do you think you feel a little excitement? You feel inspired, right? Mm-hmm. So then that synchronicity is saying, use this energy, use this feeling. It should be easier for you to feel this now, and go back and do it again. Mm-hmm. Keep the experiment going. And here comes the promotion. Here comes the email. Here comes the person you meet at the right time. Yes. Right? Whoa, we have something happening here, and then that becomes the momentum, right? So then we generate abundance. That's how we do it. And the relationship...
It doesn't just happen by accident, we generate it.
We generate abundance, right? So then if you have an hour meditation where you're tuning into your abundant future, but then you're spending the other 15 hours a day in lack, don't expect anything to change. You defaulted. Mm-hmm. You're back to the old energy. And if you say it's that person or that circumstance or that bank account, I'm going to say you're back to the unconscious program of being a victim, right? Mm-hmm. So then let's go a step further. If your personality creates your personal reality, and it does, and your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel, then the present personality who's listening to this podcast has created the present personal reality called their life. Nothing big there. Which means if you want to change your personal reality, you're going to have to change your personality.
Right.
Nothing changes in your life until you change, right? Mm-hmm. So then 95% of who we are is on autopilot, right? It's the programmed thoughts, hardwired thoughts, beliefs, perceptions, unconscious habits and behaviors, and really, really emotional responses that tend to be really knee-jerk and automatic, right? So if 95% of who we are is a set of unconscious programs, then the first step to change is becoming conscious of those unconscious thoughts. Now, people think when they sit down to do the work and make their change that they're doing something wrong. No, those thoughts have to come up. I'm not worthy, it's never going to work. But the person who's truly persevering towards their abundance realizes just because they have that thought doesn't mean it's true.
On autopilot. It's funny, I never had any aspirations of being an author, and I still don't. I've made most of my money selling physical products on. Hi everyone, I'm Tanaz from ForeverConscious.com, and this is your weekly energy forecast for the week of July 31st. So peaking on July 31st and running all the way through this week, and actually through most of August, is the Uranus North Node conjunction. So Uranus and the North Node are coming together. This is actually a big feature for 2022. It's a big kind of cosmic energy. It's one of the defining kind of flavors, cosmic flavors of the year. Uranus and the North Node coming together represents our collective destiny evolving, shifting, and changing. Uranus is the planet of change and awakening, and the North Node represents our highest destiny. So we have change and awakening that helps to shift us to a higher expression of our destiny. And this is more of a collective energy. It's something happening on a global level. However, we may also start to feel it in our own lives. We may feel drawn to think about what our purpose is here on this planet, what we want to do with our lives, if we want to make changes to help shift and evolve us to the next chapter of our lives, whether that's maybe a new career path, or moving, or pushing in a different direction than what we have been, trying something different. We may start to feel essences of that as we move through this week and even through the month of August. On a sort of, because this is a global energy, something that's manifesting on a collective level, we may see changes and evolution happening around finance, agriculture, farming, the environment, because these are all things that Taurus rules, and this alignment is happening in the sign of Taurus. Also, what's really interesting and what can kind of help us understand what this energy may bring is to use the Sabian symbol. So there is a medium, and she came up with a symbol which are called Sabian symbols for each degree of the zodiac. So the degree of the zodiac in Taurus that this alignment, Uranus and the North Node, is coming together on, the symbol for it is a new continent rising up out of the ocean. So if we think of the imagery that creates, it can help to add another layer of understanding to what this Uranus North Node energy might be bringing us, both on a collective level and personally. So a new continent rising up out of the ocean, it kind of creates this image or this feeling of opportunity, of new discovery, of something kind of expanding our minds, a whole new world to explore, whole new ecosystems to try and understand. So that imagery, whatever that conjures up for you, could be a signal, could be a sign as to what new things, what energies you can bring into your life under this alignment to make it more personal for you. And like I said, you might just be thinking about, hey, what is my purpose? Do I feel aligned with my purpose? Can I do more in my day-to-day to fill it with a sense of purpose? We have many purposes here. We have higher purposes. We have, purposes that fill us with joy and reward and all of that. So think about where that aligns for you, whether you're on the path of just, having a purposeful day, each moment being purposeful, or are you in a chapter of your life where you're really aiming high? You want to kind of achieve some sort of goal, some sort of purposeful goal to get you to a place that feels like it's your destiny. So wherever you are on that, you might start to notice feelings around that coming up under this alignment. But like I said, it is something that manifests more on a global level. We will be feeling it, and we will be feeling it pretty much through the month of August. What makes this week very special in regards to this alignment is not just because the alignment peaks this week on the 31st, but also Mars will join the alignment. So we'll have this Uranus North Node flavor all through the month, but just for this week, Mars will join them, creating a triple conjunction, as it's called, the three of those cosmic energies all lined up, shining down, radiating into our being. So Mars adds a fire, a passion, an energy. It can also speed things up, so it can kind of speed up the manifestation of the Uranus North Node energy. It can also create a little bit of heat, a little bit of fiery energy. If we think about Uranus and Mars coming together, that can be a very volatile energy. Sudden change, sudden things moving in a sudden direction, sudden awakenings, aha moments, realization. It can also manifest as a push for greater freedom, a push for, knocking away things that hold us back or are a barrier to where we want to be. That Mars energy can come and help us really push past any fears that are holding us back. It can also create a little bit of irritability, instability, feeling irritable because things don't feel stable, things feel a little rocky. And actually that's something that you might feel even through the month of August. This Uranus North Node alignment can create a little bit of instability. It can make things that once felt reliable, especially relating to finance, agriculture, environment, those three topics, because that's kind of where Taurus rules. It can make, issues in those areas, things to do with those topics, they can feel a little bit unstable. We can be sort of needing to make change in those areas, how we've been treating those three things in our lives, or how we've been relating or relying on those things could be up for change. And that Mars energy that's just for this week could create a bit of heat, tension, anger, irritability around it as well. It could make us really want to take quick immediate action. Mars is a good energy for following our impulses, but we don't want to look before we leap. We want to also be able to think through and not act irrationally. So kind of balancing that energy, pushing past the fears, but not acting impulsively is something that we're going to regret later. Kind of finding the balance between those two elements there as Mars joins. As far as I could find, I could not find historically any record of these three cosmic energies coming together. So it's really new territory. So astrology kind of follows patterns. These two planets coming together, this is the type of thing that we have seen. Like at the start of 2020, we had Saturn and Pluto coming together, and that has historically been connected to mass disease. And I think I even mentioned that in one of my videos, that these are the type of things we could see under that, and that is what we saw. So astrology is really just following patterns. We can sort of predict things based on the pattern. These three planets coming together, or rather two planets and the North Node, which is a mathematical point, I couldn't find anything. So it's sort of new territory. We're really sort of, seeing what could manifest, what could unfold under this super rare, probably once in a lifetime alignment. So that is the energy for the week. We are really just working with this Uranus North Node, and then this week only, Mars will be in there supercharging, heating everything up, and probably quickening the pace of what will manifest under this.
Person doesn't have any lack, and he knows how to create more of it, and he's in the experiment. Well, what would happen if I keep giving it away? He keeps getting more. That's a good experiment to have, because he is actually living in that abundant state. So then the next fundamental question is, how would an abundant person think? Write it down, dude, and fire and wire those thoughts in your brain, and install the hardware. Keep doing it with attention.
Absolutely. And you know
intention.
What? If you are thinking,
it becomes
what is
the new
that?
voice
What
in
is
your
she
head.
talking
It becomes a
about?
software program.
That was my reaction when I first heard of the Akashic Records in 2018.
What would an
I was
abundant
like,
person? How would
it
they be
felt like lightning
before you
moving
reach
through
for
my
your cell
body,
phone,
but I had no
scrolling
idea
through
what that
social
was,
media.
what they
Close your
are,
eyes
what the
and
words were.
rehearse in your
I
mind
say Akashic. If
how
you
that
say
person
Akashic,
would walk,
it's like tomato,
how they would
tomato.
breathe,
However,
how they would smile,
you want to say
how they
it
would
is,
greet
how you're
people,
gonna
how
say
they
it.
would be on Zoom calls, how
The
would they be in
Akashic
traffic,
Records
how would they
are
be at dinner.
A complete
and the act of
metaphysical
closing your
everyone,
eyes,
Hannah Gregory
library
is
of your
I'm
entire
going to be
soul.
speaking to you about the
Truly
first half of
present.
So,
August
it's the
and the
library
full
of your
supermoon,
soul's
yet another
history. It's the
supermoon, fourth in a
energetic
row, that we are going to have on the 11th or 12th of August, depending on where in the world you live.
library of your
But
soul
I really want to
history.
start
So,
again with this bigger picture, because we have this incredibly rare and important triple conjunction
that might
Mars,
sound
Uranus,
also
North
like
Node
what
that
are
I
you
talked
talking
about
about?
in the
And
last
so
couple of videos.
let's
But it's so
think
important because we
about
haven't
our
had
soul
this
in
for
this
over
moment right now.
2,000 years. So
It's
it
living
isn't
within
just
your
for the
physical
2
body.
days of
In order
exactitude,
to
July 31st and the 1st of August. It will spread, certainly through August, but really act as an ignition point for everything that unfolds for the rest of this year.
Because the Akashic Records means that you have lived more lives than this one. You had this life, you've had other lives before,
So just to
you'll have
recap
other
on
lives
that,
after. Your
it
soul
is
has been
very
through a
speedy
journey.
energy, because
And
Mars
every
and Uranus
single
are both linked to
emotion you
speed
have
in
ever
their symbolism. They want to do things
whether
quickly.
it is conscious, subconscious,
Archetypally,
subtle,
it's
very
volatile,
dominant in your
it's
awareness,
chaotic,
any
it's
emotion
turbulent.
at all.
We're
That's a
jumping
frequency.
timelines. There
It's
are
an
many
energetic
shifts in
frequency.
timelines that
And
we're going
every
through
single
right
emotion your
now.
soul has
And so it's
existed,
eruptive
or every
energy.
single
We may
emotion your
see
soul has
more
experienced in
earthquakes,
this life,
volcanoes,
and every
seismic activity, particularly because as we go into the supermoon, supermoon means is that the moon is much closer to the Earth in its orbit, and therefore there's a much greater gravitational pull on the tectonic plates, etc. And so there are very unstable geomagnetics at this time because the Earth is upgrading too. Gaia is upgrading too. It is hot energy, Mars behaviourally, and also environmentally. We've seen many fires, sadly, which are tragic when they happen because of all the destruction. But there's a kind of cleansing, purification thing going on here as well. Remember that Uranus is the planet of awakening, it's the planet of shocking truth, and I think we are going to see many of those going forwards from this point. So that's why I think it will really ignite everything that all the events that follow. It's going to be a very fast-moving few months, and I'm going to stick by what I said in my themes for January 22 video back in January, that I really think the crescendo of the year is what we're building to now. September, October, November, December, I think are enormous months for the world. But please understand why this is happening as well, because if you just think, gosh, this is just jolly luck rugby, born at a time when there's such chaos in the world, it actually has great
energetically, that's where
because this is a time of accelerated evolution for humanity at phenomenal speed, actually dizzying speed, that we're jumping timelines. As I say, we're consciousness, you're a very different person now to the person you were certainly 2 years ago, a year ago, maybe even 6 months ago. Because we are upgrading in our consciousness.
There is a part in the book where I say that everything that has
with all of the high frequency energy that many of us can feel physically, the M class, X class flares, also the fact the Earth is moving through the photon belt, that only happens once every 12,000 years, give or take 500. All of those things are contributing to our physical upgrade as well as our consciousness upgrade. But what happens in terms of physics when you have very high frequency energy coming in, as we do right now, what happens is anything that is a manifestation of low frequency energy just falls away, just crumbles, which is what we're seeing right now. That's why the old systems and structures are going to be falling away, because it's physics. And so just know that in your heart. This is a big part of the awakening as well. Anything that is not of love will fall away. It's very important to understand that, because once you can understand that very incredibly positive purpose, that shifts your whole sense of meaning in this process. You're not going from victim, being kind of kicked around by events, to actually I'm riding a wave, which is incredibly exciting, because we are.
Body color.
So have that perspective. I'm going to come back to that later in the video. So this conjunction,
play a sport, everybody's always rehearsing, right? The rehearsal process changes the
of course, I was a little caught off guard, and I just stood and looked at them. But I received exactly who they were. They speak telepathically. They don't have mouths.
Now all you gotta do is step into the footprint. Keep doing it.
Which we all have the capability to do as well. To speak telepathically, communicate
your energy changes, your mood changes, the way you walk,
immediately who they were. This experience lasted a few seconds, but of course,
you gotta condition the body now
energetically, it's not linear. It felt like many minutes long, but I was able to connect.
You are worthy to receive.
All this felt like even though I don't really remember how that happened, but
if it takes you 2 hours to get there,
I've seen them in
worth
dreams
30 years running, trying to get what you need matter to matter. Okay, so then the person who wrestles with the lack, they're out of the bleachers and they're on the playing field. Now, here's what we learned. Let's go back to beliefs now. So remember, belief is just a thought you keep thinking over and over again. Belief is something that you keep thinking enough times that you hardwired in your brain, and it becomes an automatic program. And we have beliefs about all kinds of things: money, relationships, God, whatever it is. It's all based on what we've been told or our past experiences, right? The boundaries of those beliefs are our emotions, right? So let's just say you got betrayed, or somebody abused you, or your father told you that money was bad and there's never enough of it, or whatever. That's a story, okay? But somehow it left an impression on you. Remember that event very clearly, and that's kind of rooted in who you are, right? Okay, so that emotion then is the boundary of our belief, okay? So how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. You take a thought and a feeling, 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 that's called an attitude. A series of good thoughts with a series of good feelings, you say, I have a good attitude today. You have a series of negative thoughts that are connected to a series of negative feelings, you say, I have a bad attitude today. So attitudes are just shortened states of being. Good attitude in the morning, bad attitude in the afternoon. If you take an attitude, an attitude, an attitude, you keep those up, and you string attitudes together, you create what's called a belief. And a belief is just an extended state of being. So if you keep thinking the same thought, you keep hardwiring it in the brain, you keep feeling the same feeling, you keep conditioning in your body, the redundancy of that cycle over and over again conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind of that belief. And all beliefs are subconscious states of being. Okay. Take a belief, and you string them together, you form what's called a perception. And perceptions are just such extended states of being that we're unconscious, and so then we edit out reality. In fact, most people don't see things the way they are, they see things the way they are, right? And people are always filling in reality unconsciously based on their memory. They could be married to a person for 40 years and they don't see the person, they see the memory of the person, right? And there's research to prove this, okay? So how do we change a belief or perception about ourselves or our lives, okay? We've studied this. Okay, let's just say that lack is ingrained in there. You got the story, you lived on the streets, you lost everything, you got betrayed, your business partner took everything, took your wife, you got the story in the half, okay? Okay, you gotta start telling the new story of the future, right? You gotta believe in that future more than you have to believe in the past. So how do you do that? You only believe in the past when you feel the emotions of the past. The only time you're gonna believe in the future is when you feel the emotions of the future, right? Okay? So in order for us to change a belief or perception about ourselves and our lives, we have to make a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carries a level of energy that's greater than the hardwired programs in your brain and the emotional conditioning in your body. And your body literally has to respond to your mind. That the choice that you're making to change in that moment becomes a moment in time that you never forget. And here's the key.
Physically.
The stronger the emotion you feel when you make that choice, the more you'll remember the decision. Okay, so then how do we down-regulate that old belief? If the trauma created an emotional quotient of 6 or 7, then your decision to change your beliefs got to be a 9.
Right.
And you got to come out of your resting state, and that moment has to define you. You could say, I know exactly where I was, the time of day it was, who I was with, when I made my mind up to change, right? Because you created a long-term memory. Long-term memories are created from strong emotion, right? But if the amplitude of that emotion is greater than the betrayal, boom, the body starts responding to the mind, and you're actually giving your body a taste of the future emotionally. So you brand your...
What's possible.
No, your body's actually getting the taste of that future event.
It's experiencing the future now.
Exactly. Big explosion in the quantum field. Big explosion. So the side effect of that is if you combine that clear intention with that elevated emotion, you're basically remembering your future, and it looks no different than remembering your past. Think neurologically within the circuits of that memory and feel within the emotions of that new belief, and watch your life begin to change, because nothing changes in our life that we change in. When we change our energy, we change our life. So now the experiment all of a sudden is no longer based on it being hard or trying or wishing or wanting or hoping. That's what we do when we're in lack or separation. It's about change. So then when we finally realize, in order for us to become abundant, we have to overcome the old personality. And that's 95% of who we are, right?
Yes.
So then,
what is that
the side
like?
effect of the beginning of this process
This is the telepathic
is a lot of
messages
discomfort.
I'm receiving.
It is a lot of discomfort. You're stepping outside.
It doesn't really feel any different for me personally. Like, I'm just talking in a way that I'm not thinking. Like I have to turn my brain off and I just express.
So what I was just saying about these
upgrades,
like Uranus goes in quanta, in packets of energy. It's not gradual or linear or comfortable even, it goes in jumps. So because Uranus is exactly conjunct the North Node right now and will continue to be conjunct the North Node till next February 2023, this is a period of, as I say, accelerated growth, but also
if they have something going on within their body, I'll have that going on within my body. When I go into their Akashic records, it's like I'm entering their soul. And so whatever is going on there, I'm feeling in order to get a full understanding of what it is that's coming through and what it is that I'm teaching
quantum jumps in our frequency.
as an open conduit. But when I'm opening the records for the podcast that I host and I'm just sharing a monthly lesson, I'm opening for thousands and thousands of people, so I don't feel the physical sensations of all these people. I just feel this energy coming through me. It just flows through me. Very often the Pinnacle are rhymey, like they rhyme a lot. They're a lot more poetic than I am effortlessly, like it just comes through as rhymes, and that's another way that I know. But I was actually just recording my own podcast right before this, and the wisdom that comes through when I'm channeling them, it's stuff that I don't know
just
at
know
all.
that.
And
Uranus is always
recently
about
in Panama
how
and
do
learned
we
how to surf
get to a
and
higher state
loved
of being
it. Like,
beyond
found
Saturn.
it so fun, loved it so much. And
So,
I had remembered
it's going to be
a year prior, I had
it's going to be pretty wild, but exciting. Now this conjunction, as I said last time, is happening at 18 degrees of Taurus. And so that's important if you have any planets with angles between 17 and 19 degrees of the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, because you'll either be feeling a strong sense of restlessness or freedom or variety or breaking up the old routines, or if you're kind of resisting any changes through very sudden changes can often come from the outside and are less comfortable that way. So be aware of what that Uranian energy is encouraging you to do, because we are going to have a lot of planets in fixed signs moving forwards. Saturn is in Aquarius right now, fixed sign, moves out of Aquarius as Pluto moves starts to move into Aquarius. Next March, Uranus stays in Taurus until 2026 completely. Jupiter starts to move into Taurus in May next year for the following 12 months. So we're going to have a lot of planets in fixed signs, but their purpose is also to shape a very
could access
tangible existence, if you like, in terms of the car we own and the bricks and mortar we own, etc. But we are going to be moving into an age very, very quickly where those things may become much less important as values, and what becomes more important is community, collaboration, coming together with other people, sharing.
When I first started working with the
sharing
records,
information, sharing
like
resources,
I just shared my first experience,
and that's what's very exciting,
honestly,
and it's
I was
starting to
overwhelmed,
happen so
and I was
fast.
like, this is so much.
So this
I can feel
conjunction
my
at 18
entire life
degrees
changing.
of
I was
Taurus
not
is
prepared
actually
for this. What is
setting
this?
up
And I put
the
everything
final
away. And
exact
when I say
square
put it
between
away,
Saturn
I really mean
and
I put
Uranus
my crystals
in
away.
October.
Any type of
It's only
thing
exact
that
by
I have
degree,
bought at a
not by
metaphysical
minute,
store,
but it's
I'm like, get
exact.
out of
18
my view.
of
Like, it's too much.
Aquarius
I put them
to
all into
18
drawers
of Taurus. That happens
for 2 months.
on the
And
1st
then
of
one
October,
day,
but it's really going
I
to
just
colour
felt, I
the
heard
rest of
within
this
me
year. It's going to be felt
through
most
the line,
intensely
which we're going to talk
late
about in a
September,
moment.
early
It's time.
October.
It's time.
And
Enter the records. It's time.
it is
And I was
linked
like, okay.
very much
So
to,
I sat down,
I've
entered
discussed
the
these
records,
themes
and
at
there was
ad
the
infinitum, I
Pinnacle.
think,
My
but just
grandma
as
was there,
a reminder,
who I've learned
past
has also worked with the
Saturn
records before
versus
in her
future
previous lives.
Uranus.
And I was told,
Centralization,
Ashley, you will be
Saturn,
modernizing the records. You will
decentralization,
be teaching
Uranus.
this in a way that
Control,
has not
rules
been
and
taught before.
regulations for your safety,
This is your
Saturn.
purpose. Keep going
Freedom,
into the records. Keep
Uranus.
learning. Keep
Just
going. Keep going.
don't want any
So from
rules
that
and
point
regulations.
forward,
So that's been very clear to see this aspect around all of 2021. Strong at the beginning of 22. It's been sort of backing off a little through these middle months, but is coming back strongly again. And the full moon, the full supermoon I'm about to talk about, highlights it yet again. So, which countries are or blocks of
just want them to do the
countries
experiment.
is 18
The
degrees
experiment
Taurus,
of actually trying it
highlighted,
out
18 degrees
and
of
seeing, God, if I really
But
change
if
my
I look,
energy,
for instance, at
well,
the
can I
chart
actually
for the
have an
EU,
effect that's produced
which
in my
is
life?
set for
And if I'm
1st of
waiting
November
for the event to occur,
1993.
I'm back to the illusion of separation and lack. Waiting for it to happen to take it away from me, truly a creator.
So let's say they're not waiting. What should they do instead of waiting? Keep feeling the feeling in the present moment and trust.
Look,
right?
if you're
will come to
waiting,
them.
you're not creating. I mean, that's just the way it is. So wake up every day. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want your dream? It's so much easier to forget that vision than to remember it, right? So if you're going to remember it, you got to keep it alive in your mind. How do you keep it alive in your mind? You disconnect from your environment. You close your eyes. You play music in the background. You sit your body down. It's got to pee and it's got to